Welcome to Space
Erased.
the NASA Fraudcast. I'm your host, Chris.
And I'm Matt.
Welcome to the show, buddy. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Glad to be back.
Yeah, welcome back. Last week, or last episode, I should say, we had Rachel on the program. It was great having her. We had a good discussion about 9/11, actually. You missed out.
I actually I really enjoyed the episode. I think Rachel did a great job there for her first episode. And it was definitely great seeing, an aside from the whole moon debacle that we're going through right now.
True, it was nice to get a lady's perspective, a female perspective on things, too. I think a lot of times that's overlooked here in the conspiracy community, and it's good to have.
Yeah.
So today, though, we're getting back to the moon debate here. This is the moon landing hoax episode part 2.
One big note on that, too. I'm not sure if our viewers saw this, but we got our first YouTube attack.
Yeah, actually last night at about, so this would be on January 7th, or actually technically January 8th at about 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning, Mountain Standard Time. We had an issue. Our YouTube channel went crazy, and it actually took down one of our videos briefly, and then I got it back up again. It removed our thumbnail, the moon landing, actually the first moon landing hoax part 1. It screwed with that, and then I went and looked at my girlfriend's phone, and the views were misrepresented on there. They were different from the ones on my phone. Then I look at the account that I'm logged into, the NASA Fraudcast channel. That was different.
It was all bad.
Everything went haywire, and I don't know if it was intentional assault on the channel or what, but maybe I kind of hope it was, because that means we're on the right track.
I was going to say, every project we've ever done, we've gotten some sort of huge negative, from it, whether it's being followed in cars or YouTube videos getting torn down or whatever.
That was actually pretty crazy. Yeah, we got followed I got followed a white van one time, and then you got followed by something another time.
I got followed as well. So that's
really creepy when you start taking random turns and somebody follows you through parking lots and places they don't need to go.
Yeah, well, my whole thing was I did a full loop around. It's like, you mean to tell me
that you also had to do that?
Yeah, because it's one of those oops, maybe I made the wrong turn, that kind of thing. That's allowable once, but when it happens 4 or 5 times, you're like, all right, this is the jig's up, so you just try and make them look like an idiot by driving around. Anyway, enough about that. So
we're gonna get into the we're actually gonna break the episode now. The first episode we're gonna break into segments now. So we're gonna just experiment with a new format for a minute here, just to kind of triangulate in on what the final version of the show is gonna be like. Today we're gonna start out with a news segment of some relevant NASA related news. Go ahead, Matt. Matt's got the story.
Yeah, so we're going to try and keep this as current as possible. Obviously, these are YouTube videos, so you may see this years later. Not a problem. But basically, we'll try and leave as many links in the description as we can, things like that. To start it off, I'm going to be kind of quick on this one. But basically, earlier in January here, the big deal with the Mars rover Curiosity is that it took a picture from another side of a dune that they were looking at. So it made it around a giant dune, which was the big news story. Thank God we spent billions of dollars on that. And the best part is they released a photo of the dune in the background, and the most fake thing in the picture was the dune in the background.
Yeah, so go ahead and try a little harder next time, NASA. Let's go.
Yeah, and the best part was I'm expecting to see this on Joe's conspiracyblog.com. No, guess what the web address was? But it was JPL's NASA.gov website that had that picture on there. So this is mainstream stuff here, guys. That they're putting these pictures on.
Well, the Flat Earth movement has spoken, okay? And they're going after the fake images of the Earth. They're going after the fake images of satellites and all this fake crap. Actually, as I was putting the moon landing hoax episode together, I was going through all this content of retro footage from NASA, right? And I was typing in starting of the NASA or Apollo program or whatever. And holy crap, dude, just go back and watch anything from the beginning of NASA and tell me that's not the fakest shit you ever saw in your life. They sent up the first satellite they ever sent up was a weather satellite, and it took pictures of the Earth, and you can see the clouds and stuff going by. It's a fucking drawing, dude.
Yeah.
It's completely a farce.
We're going to be talking a lot about a specific gentleman tonight, Bart Sibrel, but
kind of our hero, I guess. Well, kind of, but
well, and
he's good.
I hate to say it, but this is going to be kind of like an ode to a funny thing happened on the way to the moon, which is Bart Sibrel's famous documentary, which I feel like gave the most public exposure to the moon hoax debate.
Yeah. At least on YouTube, I think it's the best, most credible, Astronauts Gone Wild is another program that he put together, which is just it's super cut of all these times he went up to astronauts with a Bible in his hand. He said, if you walked on the moon, pretty simple question, put your hand on the Bible and just swear that you walked on the moon.
Swear to God
if it was like done that many times and it's so, everybody knows, then just put your hand on there. Just do it. And not a single one astronaut did it. And he hemmed and hawed the whole time, and then he realized,
Edgar Mitchell is like my favorite and least favorite astronaut all in one person.
I used to like Ed. Now I'm out of it.
I used to love Mitchell.
I used to be a UFO guy, I used to like Ed Mitchell, but now I realize that he's just disseminating bullshit information about aliens and stuff.
I think that's the thing that hurts the most, is that when you realize, like, oh, not only was the whole thing fake, but the guy you liked the most was like, he might not have been the biggest head. You could argue that Neil was, but he kind of took himself out of the picture a long time ago and didn't want to be in the public eye. However, Edgar, he's been on radio shows, he's been on a ton of different stuff, and he's kind of perpetuated this whole lie. And then when approached with the direct evidence from Bart, the guy just backs into a corner, starts going hysterical, this, that, and the other thing. But anyway, go watch it. Definitely go watch. A funny thing happened.
Videos we're going to highly recommend is
Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, which is if you want to get any sort of background or exposure into the moon hoax, check there first. Just do yourself a favor. It's free on YouTube. It's on his page, so if you can, try and go to it should be the first link you get when you type it in, but try and go to Bart's page.
Yeah, the other video as well is called Astronauts Gone Wild. And
Astronauts Gone Wild it's
a must-see.
For any person that is into conspiracies or this, that, or the other thing, if you're into it, watch it. It's a great watch.
But also check out Bart Sibrel's channel. I've seen a couple of good videos on there. He does a lot of different stuff too. Yeah, and a lot of it's like, the guy worked in television, so he's got like, bits from commercials and stuff that are kind of irrelevant. But, he does have a whole playlist devoted to NASA fraudulent goodness or whatever. All right, so we've covered our news here. Now we're going to go into the main bulk of it here, sir. Yeah. I would like to make a few comments about Bart Sibrel, actually.
Go for it.
After you watch this footage, it'll make more sense to you if you guys go out and check the footage out. But after you watch the footage, I think you might share the same opinion as I do. I like the fact that he did what he did. He made a huge step forward in proving that it's a hoax by, propositioning all these different astronauts to put their hand on the Bible and swear that they walked on the moon. However, the guy goes at it with like the gotcha journalist Michael Moore thing that really pisses me off, and I think it discredits the information he got. I feel like if he was more respectful, like Neil Armstrong and all these guys, Neil's tried to come out and say that it's been bullshit. That whole those who can look past truth's protective layers kind of
you can just
speech.
Hear the gun against Neil's head, though. I mean, there's no way he could say anything about the position he's in. So that's why he just kind of had to peel himself away from the public layer.
I think all these guys have their pensions or something being lorded over their head in order to keep them from talking.
Friends or family safety kind of thing as well. So, but yeah, I don't think you could. It wouldn't just. You have to be somebody like Bart in order to get any sort of information or credibility or traction going, because if he just went in, excuse me, I think there's something wrong with this whole moon thing, everybody would just laugh him off. Think of how impossible it would have been.
But if he was more respectful of these guys, granted, part of it that makes it watchable is that he is kind of a dick to these guys, and you're like, oh wow, astronauts have always been like exalted on high, like they're all so special or whatever, but they're just regular people, and he treats them for the first time like regular people. That's the first time you get to see him treated like regular people. However, I don't feel like his findings are usable on like a national scale just because of how he presented the information. That's my
correct,
disconnect.
But at the same time, he removed himself from his own documentary, so he's not in his own documentary. He's got another gal that does the voiceover for it, which is just fine. So it's a guy that even if you don't like his gotcha style live journalism, his documentaries are great. I mean, I think he did a nice job on that. And it comes across as very like high quality and a decent budget documentary. So I mean, that's mission accomplished as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. So to get into the story here, Bart, what started it all off for the guys, he got his hands on some classified NASA footage that was actually given to him from a representative from Johnson Space Center, and that footage actually has some astronauts doing some not so good stuff. It pretty well shows the astronauts faking. This is the flat earthers will love this. It basically shows them faking that picture of the Earth that gets used in all the science textbooks. What they did, and I'm sure a lot of you know this already, but for those who don't, they took a camera and they sat in the back of the space capsule and they looked at the window, and the window's shape is circle, and they just are looking at, they're in low Earth orbit, so the Earth is like massive outside, but through the window it's a perfect circle. It looks like a little Earth. and the blackness of the cabin inside makes it look like outer space, and that's why you don't see any stars in space. It's because they faked it through a window.
Yeah, and the first video that he shows in the documentary, the Earth is like it's like a smashed
an ellipse or something.
Yeah, like an ellipse kind of a thing, but it's like a smashed sphere. And so because the Terminator line wasn't correct, they had to do a different style cutout for the window, so that when you put the whole or the section of Earth through the window, you see that little Terminator line that makes it look like an actual spherical object. So they got crafty about it. They got smarter as they did their testing.
Yeah, to kind of make it look like the sun was going around the Earth, and they cast a shadow on one side.
But Chris made an excellent point. I guess a lot of people have too. But
I make a lot of excellent points.
Right. But there's well, at least from what I saw, there's hardly any landmass in that picture of the Earth. So basically, you're saying like, oh, you're taking a picture of the one spot like of the what is the Pacific Ocean probably.
Well, my actual problem, I think that I've mentioned in other videos, is that it just shows Africa, and Africa is like the entirety of the Earth.
But either just showing an ocean
of the globe.
Yeah, just showing an ocean, or just like the tip of a landmass. That kind of thing is what drives me nuts. Especially because I've been bombarded, and thank you guys once again for all the emails you guys have been sending.
Oh heck yeah!
But I started this show 4 or 5 episodes ago. 100% sure the Earth was round, and didn't have anything against it. But right now, I got to admit, with everything coming in and these great arguments too.
Yeah,
I mean, they're just these bulletproof arguments. I've heard so many people say, like, give me an example, give me something I can set on my desk, and I can just prove that what you're saying is true. And there's the gyroscope theory, there's the plumb bob theory. There's a ton of different things out there that are just so simple.
Would you care to briefly elaborate on both of those?
Yeah. So the plumb bob theory is basically, and this is going to be hard to do because I'm at a weird angle with the camera here, but a plumb is supposed to hang directly straight down, right? So that's what makes something plumb or straight up and down. So you use that as a guide to make sure that your walls and everything like that are kind of coming in flush, that kind of deal. So the idea is, if you're on a spherical object, the point of the plumb bob is going to point towards the center of the Earth. So let me try and draw a 2-second lame
nice,
graphic.
A high-tech graphic.
That's right. Here at our show, we
Space
like to
erased.
Have high-quality imagery, much like NASA, of course. To show
you.
Actually,
I don't know. This rivals some of the stuff I've seen them put out. So.
But basically, if you think of an object here, and I'll even do a second one.
You're going to have to hold it up in the camera so the folks at home can see.
I need like a permanent marker or something like that. Anyway, basically, think of a round object, and if you have something pointing towards the center here and something pointing towards the center here, they're both going to make different straight walls, right? So you want to try and get a plumb bob to make 2 straight walls so that you have a nice, rectangular or square building, right? For think of like a skyscraper, for example. But if the Earth is truly a sphere and those angles are slightly different, what you'll have is a building that is wider at the top than it is at the bottom.
Oh, yeah, I remember that theory. Okay.
Well, because your walls are pointing in at different angles,
and that's the theory of like the plumb bob's always going to be attracted to the center of the Earth,
correct.
Like the center of gravity pulling toward.
A great experiment, and what I'd really love to do, and just I'll try and make one in the future here, but just get a magnet, a super powerful magnet like a neodymium. Get one of those guys, and then hook another magnet to a string and do a couple of them, and you could have it on like a wire, like a coat hanger, that kind of a thing. But you can have these different strings hanging down, and they'll all point to the center of the magnet, similar to the plumb bob once again. So you'll have a very small diagram of exactly what it looks like for a plumb bob to be attracted to the center of a sphere.
Nice. Well, okay, so this episode's actually about the moon hoax here.
Anyway,
so let's go back to Bart Sibrel.
Yeah, so
these guys have actually, in the comment section, has blown up over the last couple of episodes where, they want more Flat Earth content, so we will bring you more Flat Earth content.
Correct, yeah.
And this really, okay, so to get back into, or to briefly cover our arses here real quick, the whole program here, the reason why we're covering NASA stuff, the reason why we're covering the moon landing hoax or 9/11 or any of this stuff, it's because we're being lied to, and he and I are now, I feel like I'm getting you on this track here, but I firmly feel like that it all leads back to Flat Earth, and that it all leads back to just the fact that we're being lied. There's some huge conspiracy, and it's all tied together. And all these things that we're covering here, as esoteric or kind of out of the way as they seem, I feel personally like they're connected. It's a one big. They're lying to us. I don't know why, and that's what this program's here to figure out.
We mentioned that in, I believe, the pilot episode or the first episode, but that we were looking for smoking guns. We're going to try and bring the smoking gun. So one of them tonight that we're going to cover is the Van Allen belt, which I personally feel like is the smoking gun that validates at least the fact that we never went to the moon and why we probably haven't achieved anything more than low Earth orbit.
I feel like it's a double smoking gun because, first let's explain what the Van Allen belt is.
So the Van Allen belt is a
Van Allen radiation belt.
Correct. So the Van Allen radiation belt is basically, think of two donuts that, or actually think of a donut where the Earth is the donut hole in the center. So you have these electromagnetic fields radiating around from the inside to the outside of this sphere with the Earth in the center.
Yeah, I'll put up a graphic there.
There you go. Yeah, to make it a little easier. There, in some cases, that belt can split into two belts, or it can split into three different belts, depending on the solar winds in the that are currently happening at that time. So basically what that means, or what that all boils down to, is the fact that you have three, and it's a good device too, because basically this is what protects us from like meteorites, comets, things like that coming towards the Earth. Our electromagnetic radiation from around the Earth here is kind of what bounces or moves those different objects out of the way. So it's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing if you're, a bag of meat, a human. So the problem and the contention,
traveling in a microscopic tin can or an aluminum foil covered tin can, basically.
Correct, and that's another thing, and it's a point I'm going to bring up extremely quick, and then we'll go into extreme detail on a later episode. But if you have something that's made out of metal and you throw it through something magnetic, what's going to happen? It's going to pull something, right? It has to. There has to be some sort of magnetic reaction. So to fly something metal through an electromagnetic field, you would assume something would happen. If nothing else,
I thought it was a radiation field, though. Is that necessarily electromagnetic?
There's two different things. Well, it's electromagnetic radiation, first off. And please correct me if I'm wrong. But
if we have any scientists in the crowd, let us know, because that, for me, I have no idea.
From what I understand, it's like a highly charged electron pool, basically, going on there. So you have these electrons that are so excited that they can only reach out to a certain extent, and that is the edges of the Van Allen belt, basically. So that's why they hold kind of like a rounded shape, is because it's basically like the ultimate end of this electron's pull away from its atomic structure.
And doesn't the Van Allen, that belt? No. I'm trying to think of what happens with the Aurora Borealis. Isn't that like we have like another magnetic thing around the world, don't we?
Well, that's just like a solar flare being like, or hitting the Earth's atmosphere and making some sort of reaction. Once again, that's something I didn't plan on for this particular
This
topic.
is something else I wanted to mention during this episode specifically, because we got called out on something the other day. I don't think I'll necessarily get into it specifically, but here's the issue. Matt and I are researchers. We're guys that are interested in this topic, and in no way are we calling ourselves experts by any means.
In fact, we are. If nothing else, this show is a cry for attention from smarter people than ourselves.
we want to create a community of people that are all committed to figuring out why why this hoax is being perpetrated on us, and how we can possibly overcome or at least wake other people up to the hoax.
Well, and that's why I'm trying to make a little bit more of definitive statements in this particular episode, because the last episode, people were great. We have such an intelligent crowd following right now, which is something I didn't expect. When you say something like moon hoax and this kind of thing, you expect like, I got that, that moon thing was a total conspiracy. Like I'm expecting all the lower. Not lower. That sounds really bad.
Call them the crazies,
but I don't know, just the
some
less
people could call us crazies.
Exactly. That's why I'm saying I'm tiptoeing through a minefield here. But I was expecting the more crackpot type people out there to start responding.
That's more politically correct.
Yeah, right. So Trump 2016, whatever. It's we threw out political correctness, right? But no, the outspoken group that we have following us here is perfect, because I've gotten a ton of responses. So if I say something, I have a awesome group that's going to keep me honest, which I definitely appreciate.
But to finish what I was saying earlier, in the pilot episode, we mentioned that this is a learning experience for the both of us, and we're doing
Correct.
it in a way nobody else would ever do it. Like, basically,
Live.
we're learning live in front of real people, right? So, of course, we're going to make mistakes. That's why we encourage people to be very positive in the comment section. And actually, today, we're going to be introducing a segment here very shortly, in about 5 minutes, that it's a Q&A. It's the first segment we're going to do now, and we're going to do it in the future as well, where we take your questions from the comment section or in the emails you send us of our videos and whatnot. And we're going to answer your questions to the best of our ability and ultimately like help you guys participate in the show, which is awesome because then we're all doing something now.
And we're going to get to that right at the end of the episode here, so we're going to hold on to it till then.
Absolutely.
The meat and potatoes here is the facts. So going into the moon hoax and why it's a hoax, the last episode we talked about the history of it. Today we're going to talk about the actual evidence behind it. So I'm going to start, this isn't really in any chronological order, but this is to kind of get the different things on the table here. So the first one is on the moon. They took a bunch of pictures. They released a lot of them to the public, or the ones that we got anyways. And in those pictures, there's lighting inconsistencies. Chris here is a fantastic lighting expert. He's the guy that puts on the show here for us, and he's done wonders with our current setup here. And I'm in his
I'm an enthusiast. I wouldn't call myself an expert. And you can tell by this particular shot that I'm not a lighting expert. We throw this thing together pretty quick because we are two guys that have day jobs, but we feel this is important and we want to get this out there to people. But yeah, my background's in audio engineering, so I have like a little bit of film knowledge, but mostly in audio.
I, on the other hand, have zero experience in this. So what I'm kind of using as a measuring stick is myself in this scenario here. So anything that seems incredibly stupid easy to me, I know that Chris has to understand already, and that our viewer base is going to do just fine at it. So the shadows are not parallel. So if you're on the moon, somebody's taking a picture of you. There's only one light source, which is the sun, coming from the sun, right, to the moon, right? So if there's only one light source, all the shadows coming from that light source have to be in parallel. Because if there's any sort of deviation, or if they cross, that means you have a second light source or multiple light sources going on in a particular shot.
And I'll put up a photo that demonstrates that.
Correct. And there's a couple of different ones. They have arrows pointing to them, all sorts of fun stuff. So that's the first big one, saying that they had to have at least, if they didn't lie about it, they had to have at least brought a second light source, which they never really fessed up to. So the next one being, of course, the Earth cutout that Chris mentioned. So that's something that's used in science books. It's something that's used to teach kids all over the world, ourselves included, what the Earth looks like. And here it was, just a piece of the Earth through a porthole. So it's like looking out an airplane window, basically.
Go back and search pictures of Earth from space and just watch all the
look
bullshit.
At all of them. And if they're not a cheesy 80s computer graphic, they're like a really low quality National Geographics from the 1970s like picture, basically. So all the pictures that I've seen have been pretty well low quality at this point, or they just made a digital graphic for it. The next, of course, being the Van Allen belt. So if you have, once again, we talked about the Van Allen belt, so I'm not going to go to too much more on this, but if you take astronauts or humans, put them through a giant radiation field like a microwave or something like these are not microwaves to point out, but just an analogy here. But if you were to put the astronauts through a ton of radiation, it would kill them, right? And most of these astronauts lived out a perfectly healthy, long life, and Buzz Aldrin's still alive. And I don't think Edgar Mitchell's dead, so I'm pretty sure he's still alive. I'll double check that.
Yeah, we can double check.
So I mean, all these astronauts lived a perfectly healthy, long life, even after going through this gigantic radiation belt. So basically, the owner or the guy that created the Van Allen belt, Van Allen, said that later on in life, said that the radiation wasn't strong enough to kill the astronauts, so therefore they were able to go through, land on the moon, come back, and be just fine.
Which also in Bart Sibrel's Astronauts Gone Wild documentary, it shows the astronauts disagreeing with themselves or with each other because they didn't film them all together. They were all filmed separately, and all of their answers when it regarded seeing particles of radiation, shoot into their eyes when their eyes were closed in space, they all had different answers. That and certain astronauts say that they saw stars in space, and then the Apollo astronauts, when they were interviewed after the fact, they did that panel after the Apollo mission, and they're like, I don't remember seeing stars at all up there, So there's a lot of conflicting evidence amongst astronauts. The few people that have been up there can't even keep they can't even keep their story straight. So that would be a red flag.
That was a bad one. Chris already pointed out, but there's no stars in any of the pictures. So what NASA said is the exposure setting they used cut out the faint light of the stars coming and only brought in that powerful light from the sun hitting the moon. That could be true, but at the same time, like, nobody took a picture. They brought all this stuff up to the moon, but they couldn't bring a telescope. This is Bart Sibrel's point, not to rip it off, but this is Sibrel's point in saying if they had all this time to bring if they brought 3 cars up to the moon, but they couldn't bring one telescope, basically.
Yeah.
So
and they couldn't take one 360-degree picture of the moon, which drives me nuts. They could just take a video camera and just spin around a circle, show us Earth, show us your lunar module.
Yeah.
If it's all there, that would be an easy thing to do, and never have we ever gotten a shot like that.
Correct. Yep. There's also these little T's, or these little view, or what are they called on the camera?
They're little crosshairs, I guess.
Basically crosshairs on the camera.
They show distance, and they're used for measurements and stuff like that with the photos.
Correct. They're burned into a picture, so they always have to be.
Well, they're actually on the lens of the camera, so you can't. They will always be on top of whatever you're taking a picture
Correct.
of.
So they're always, exactly. They're always going to be on top. And in what you'll see in a lot of these pictures, and if you just Google, moon hoax, things like that, you'll see these as well. But you'll see those crosshairs be behind different objects, and Chris will be the first person to point out that those are 2 pictures overlaying each other, or some sort of fraud, basically.
That's called a composite. Yeah, when you layer one thing over the other, that's how like movies have been made forever and ever. In fact, it's recently CNN. This is just like within a month or so ago. CNN released a new picture of the blue marble. Sorry, we're running out of time, so we're gonna scream through this point here, but. They released a new picture of the Earth, and then they admit in the actual newscast that it's a composite. And what a composite means is that they put a bunch of different pictures together, and it creates a picture of the Earth. But what we're seeing is by no means a snapshot of the Earth from a satellite, which they have tons of satellites way far out and far orbit. They could easily take a picture of the Earth, and they don't. So
perfect.
Why?
So that is a huge inconsistency. The next one, of course, is the camera choice. So they definitely had color cameras in 1969,
this is a great
and
point,
you've seen a ton of color video footage from the Apollo program. But for some reason, the most important day in American history, when we land on the moon, they bring a black and white camera, and not only that, they bring a bad black and white camera.
Yeah, and furthermore, they're shooting inside the capsule with a color camera.
With a color camera.
Take that thing out.
So that means that they had a
picture.
color camera in the space capsule and decided to once again take the black and white camamera.
Not only that, you got the shitty one. Let's grab that one. And bring that up.
It's only the most important day in the world. Not a big deal. Also, on the side of the lunar lander was a fixed camera. Basically, that was in what?
Black and white.
No,
what?
Color. That's right.
I thought you meant the one when they're landing on the moon. It's a black and white shot.
That one is. But I'm talking about there was one actually mounted on the side of the lunar lander, and that one was definitely in color because it takes a still shot of one of the
misunderstood.
Yeah, no problem. I was just, but we're both
screw up his point.
Both correct, but in different ways. So the black and white issue was definitely bad. We had the technology. Not only that, but when it was actually transmitted from space back to NASA. The reporters were all there to get this footage, but did they stream the footage directly to the broadcasters? No. What they did is made the news crews take their news cameras and film a projector of this I'm going to use the word crappy, but this low res imagery, which basically degraded the image even further.
And the TV stations complained like there's no tomorrow that they couldn't get a direct feed, which should also be a red flag. But actually, let's put in one more point here before we move into the last topic. I'd actually like to throw this one in if you don't mind. Okay. So for proof that something is BS, I'll put up the footage now. Blah, magic. All right, sweet. Watch this video. It's going to be it's where the lunar lander is taken off from the moon and it's meeting back up with the orbiter. Tell me that this footage does not look exactly like something Stanley Kubrick would have filmed in like 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's fakest,
all the same as stuff. Yeah.
Freaking footage I've ever seen. So you're watching it now. You tell me how fake or how real that looks, because especially when it starts twisting and like fitting, you know, it's like gonna do its little retro. It shoots little fake boosters and shit. Watch this stuff and tell me that this is not fake.
Yeah.
All right, so let's do Q&A here, and then we got to get out of this place, buddy. We're running out of time.
Cool. My last point, though, is with the flag.
It.
So what they're saying is that there's wind on the moon. I'm not even going that far. I'm just saying that in a vacuum, even with 1/6 gravity, if you touch that thing at all, you're going to see a flag moving. So on that one, I do believe that was a good point, and I think they replicated it just fine in the hoax.
Well, in addition, with the 6th gravity, these guys should have been able to jump 10 feet in the air and do somersaults and acrobatic stuff that people on Earth can't do. Even the best acrobat couldn't do on Earth.
Yeah.
And they didn't do any of that stuff. It looks like it was shot with wires suspending everybody, and then they cut the film speed in half.
Yeah, they cut the film speed in half. So that's all you have to do is basically speed the video up 50%, and they all start looking and sounding like us right now because we're trying to get through the end of the episode. So question and answer, Chris.
All right,
what's our question?
Answer time. Well, we've got a few questions. This one comes from LBB Store. He says, interesting talk. So if the moon landing lie was all about the space race, why hasn't any other country continued to put a man on the moon ever?
Simple answer is they can't.
No, I don't even think, even if you believe the story that the way it's been told to us, it's just really hard and nobody can do it. I don't know why. Why not, his second question, why not even attempt to be the second moon landing, or second to land on the moon as technology has advanced? I think it's the same answer. Technology, like China's made it there with lunar rovers and stuff like that. I just don't think you can bring a man there. So I think we faked it, right? And then obviously we couldn't even get there, so they can't get there either.
Yeah, I would also agree with Chris on that one. That's pretty much like the main meat and potatoes. I mean, if we couldn't get there, the Russians were already way ahead of us, so we didn't even have the technology in the first place. So we landed on the moon after failing all the other tests that the Russians had passed. So I'm sure the Russians were just laughing at us like, no way in hell did you just do that?
No, because they had already been up there doing their thing for a long time.
Yeah,
they were way better at it
than we were.
Or are probably, because we're still relying on them to get up to the International Space Station, which we're paying for, and everybody else gets to use, but we don't. And half the time, I guess we left it unmanned for a period of time, too, in about 2013. That's ridiculous because we couldn't afford to, whatever. Anyway, so LBB Store has a multi-part question here. So last couple, let's see here. Why no space race to see who is the first to build a space moon base or even a joint base?
Too expensive and nobody would go for it.
No, and again, you'd have to get somebody out there, and nobody knows how to do that.
And what would you use it for? That would be the other thing. And
well, you'd use it as a liaison outpost to go to, or not liaison, but you use it as an outpost to go to, and then go to Mars.
Go to Mars
from
or
there.
something. Yeah,
and you can make hydrogen fuel from the moon. Apparently, they can get hydrogen-3 from the moon, so they would probably make a mining operation for hydrogen-3, and then they'd go to Mars using that as a fuel. So another part of his question, this is a lot of questions here. Why no probes from the other countries providing footage of where the U.S. landed? That's a great question.
Probably because
China
they
did
couldn't
not
find it.
To my knowledge, because we weren't ever there, so you can't find anything. But China probably couldn't find it, I guess. I don't know. Or maybe they're deliberately implicated in the hoax and don't want to blow the cover of America. Why do other moon probes avoid this area? Probably same answer. You would think, he says, they would work in concert and cover each other's backs well. And I think they do, actually. I think you answered your own question there, sir. Well, anyways, thank you, LBB Store. Fantastic questions. Keep them coming, guys. Every episode, we're going to try to get a few more questions on here. We ran out of time today. Matt, any last-minute comments that you want to throw in here?
No, I just, once again, just want to let everybody know, if you liked the episode tonight, please like and subscribe the channel. Our channel on YouTube is the NASA Fraudcast channel, and you can get to us through email by emailing us at the at nasafraudcast@gmail.com.
That's nasafraudcast@gmail.com. No spaces.
Yep.
And send us your questions. Keep commenting on the videos, and if we like your question, we'll include it in the next episode.
Till then, this has been Space Erased, the NASA Fraudcast.
I'm your host, Chris.
And I'm Matt.
And we're out. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll catch you next time.